Batman 100, James Tynion the fourth writing, with Jorge Jimenez on the art and the main story, and then we also have Carlo Pigolane and Gilliam March on the backup stories. Which I wasn't even sure this was like when I started to read this, I wasn't aware that it was going to be like a main story and backups. I really just thought it was going to be like a 50-page like finale to the whole thing.
And it could have been. I don't think anyone would have been surprised.
No. Not that the main story felt shortchanged by any means. It's just kind of what I expected. I mean, Tynion is really good at tugging on her bat like love, because having Barbara start this book, because we knew she was going off to the clock tower last the last issue, but her like taking off the cowl and putting on the glasses and saying Oracle is back, as we see like Steph and Cass and their new bat suits that we saw.
And I mean that's the final panel and final line of dialogue on the first page is Oracle is back online. You're okay. We're in for a treat.
Yeah, and we have Bullock standing up to the corrupt decisions, saying, "No, we're going to do this off books. Hell with a badge."
I realized when he's like, "What would Jim have done?" He's like, "I don't even have to watch."
Yeah, just throws his badge down.
I really like this Bullock.
And and then we go straight to Nightwing, who's in blue, and we have Babs and Nightwing. Not only are they chatting and talking about him being back in the Nightwing suit and all that, but there's even jokes where she's like, "Hey, there's someone behind you." She's like, "I already saw him." She's like, "No, you didn't." Like, there's bickering. There's the wonderful banter of Babs and Dick already there.
And so I'm very impressed by in this issue is Tynion did confirm in his newsletter this week that 100 was originally supposed to be his final issue. Essentially confirming those rumors about 5G were kind of true in some ways. We would have been relaunching with a new Batman next month. Maybe they'd have spaced out these last couple of issues. Who knows if they wanted to launch in the new year or whatever. But and he said, he struggled because he had to really pivot with his writing. So he learned fairly late because he was working on double shipping schedules. So he was working ahead, and then had to realized he was staying on it and had to kind of reconfigure his stories to work long form. I think he's done a really good job of kind of pivoting fairly late in what the writing process was, by the sounds of it.
Yeah, and all the stuff with Batman and Joker. So you get this idea that the Bat family are going around saving the city as Batman's taking on Joker, and Joker's throwing zombie Alfred at him, and try to he's like, "Hey, let's switch roles. How about I put you in the vat, and I'll become the new Batman. I've got the money, I've got the toys, I've even got the butler." So like the fight's really good. You have Punchline being confronted by Nightwing,
which I learned from whatever book I had to read last month. This is because Nightwing, when he was Rick, was actually kind of being forced to work for Punchline. So this is, if you've been reading that, quite a cathartic moment for Dick, by the sounds of it.
I mean, I enjoyed it anyway, just because he's the big number 2 in command, so he's like the one who comes and confronts the number 2 villain. But I love the moment at the end of this scene though, where she's like, I've got the numbers advantage. All these clowns go behind her, and then we just see like the Bat family coming behind Dick. It's just,
and again, this is Steph and Cass in their new suits with the logos.
It's full of these cathartic, like, hell yeah, the Bat family's again. Obviously, Damien's missing. That's been in the story.
Yeah, but it feels like an issue 100 should.
Yeah. So all this is going on, and Joker and Batman are having their big fight, and Joker's basically, yeah, it's all that future you thought you could have. It's not real. It was never going to be real. And he's about to essentially win, and Harley comes in and shoots Joker in the eye. So Joker's missing an eye by the end of this issue.
At least for the foreseeable future.
And Harley gives Batman this insane choice, where to try and force him to let Joker die, straps a bomb to Joker's chest and then a bomb to her chest, because this has to end. And you have to make the choice. You can only save one of us. So it's that reversal, because so many villains do this thing where they'll take 2 people that the hero cares about. Hell, it happens at the end of Batman Forever, of all things. And
I mean, you could have used the better example with Dark Knight.
Yeah, sure, it does happen with Dark Knight. But it happens at the end of Batman Forever, where you can only save one. But in this case, it's actually one of the 2 victims that are doing it to themselves, saying, no, you have to choose not to let him die.
And it's not even 2 people he cares about. It's 2 people he kind of hates.
Yeah. Well, Harley's kind of in a weird...
yeah, that's why I said kind of. Otherwise, it would have just been outright hates.
But Batman immediately is just like, no, he's literally just had my other Batsuit on. He's got the tech. He's got the means to escape. I don't need to save him. You're going to have to do it yourself.
I like that the Joker's like, I'm not going to do that. It's not easy. I'm happy to go, and prove my point here. And you almost believe him.
Yeah, and Batman, like, ultimately he was always going to make the choice to save Harley, because if he's going to have to choose between them, he's going to save Harley. Of course he is. The art here is very good, by the way. Like, the panel of like his hand reaching out as Harley's running into the fire is a particularly pretty panel, I thought.
Yeah, and one of his ears is snapped off at this point as well. So he's just kind of, every time you see his head, the shape's not quite there. It's really effective.
Also the symmetry of like half, his cowl's sort of like damaged, so his eyes showing, and it's just the opposite of Joker, who's missing the eye. It's like a
there's really good stuff.
Symmetry there. So we hear Joker scream as they
walk away from me.
Yeah. As the explosion happens, and we don't quite see what happens, but obviously by the end of the book, we never really suspect that he's gone. And Harley says that because Harley wakes up in a hospital bed, and he's like, "Look, we know he's going to come back. This always happens. Like he's always going to go into hiding. He'll recoup, and he'll be back." But they actually have quite an uplifting conversation here about how, yes, the city's going to take time to recuperate, and but I'm going to be here to help it, and so are you, basically.
Yeah. And I think this scene has one of my only real problems with the book, and it's pretty small nitpick as they go, but Batman take on the city, it's changed so much, and I'm like, I mean, the story felt big enough for this story, but it didn't feel like a truly city changing story. At least not for me. Maybe your mileage may vary, but for me it didn't feel like it deserved quite this moment at the end of the story.
I wonder if this is like an after effect of him having to like maybe push some things for future stories. That maybe there was going to be more big things that happened in this one.
Do you want to get excited by something else he said in that newsletter?
What did he say?
He said it's going to be a big year ahead for people who like Babs in the Oracle seat.
So now we would tie into some of the other Batgirls being the foot soldiers.
Yeah. I said last week, well, maybe Babs going to retire the Batgirl and be Oracle, and you were like, there's been no suggestion of that, and now there's a.
Well, there wasn't a suggestion of that.
Well, now there is.
There is now, but I stand by it. At the time, I was right.
Yeah, well, I deserve my apology.
Never. So, I actually kind of like the dialogue here where Batman's like, I have to be a better Batman. I can be a better man, a better Batman. And Harley's like, well, there's no point in being a crappier Batman. He's like, I guess not. So it teases the next villain we're getting, the Ghostmaker, which we heard about in solicits and we saw art of before.
I do like the design though.
It's a little bit over designed. It feels very similar to a couple of other characters, I think. Like, who was that character in Hill's like short running detective? It feels very similar to that to me.
Yeah, okay. I can see where you're
Mr. Nobody? Was that what he was called? Or something
maybe.
like that.
Maybe there was a nobody in the early detective.
Maybe that's what I'm thinking of.
Maybe Batman and Robin I'm thinking of in the New 52 by Tomasi.
No, that's what that is, yeah. But if it reminds me of that, and I've definitely seen other examples of this, it's kind of the high-tech ninja.
Yeah. I really like the white and the grey, though, as opposed to the black and the dark blue greys. I don't know. I think it looks... There's probably a reason why it seemed familiar, because it looks good.
My only concern about this tease is that it feels like it's going to be a big city changing thing again, because he's like, we'll make Gotham choose like their true champion, blah blah. And I'm like, you know what, Tyler, it'd be okay to just do a small, like, personal story after this.
It would. My hope is that the Clown Hunter story is next, and then we get to this. So we got at least an arc in between.
Which leads us on to the next story here, which is the Clown Hunter himself, although he's in his civvies, coming home and finding Batman. And I like this idea that Batman, obviously he was too busy at the time, but he did like pay attention and he did look into what this was after the fact, and shows up to the Clown Hunter's place and basically says, look, you're done killing. No more of this. And your Joker, I know the Joker killed your parents like 5 years ago. I know why you're doing this. You're going down this path. And this kid's he's kind of Jason Todd-esque in the sense that, hey, you keep letting him live. Like, all those people who put on clown masks and helped the Joker during the riots and during the Joker War, most of them aren't in prison. Most of them are just taking their masks off and they're just walking down the street. They could be anyone. And they're normal people.
I think I appreciate this coming right after Harley having that kind of exact same thing with him.
Yeah, I like that too. And, so Batman gives him a car and says, hey, look, go to see Leslie Tompkins, take a better path. and he's at the end of the little story. He's like, maybe later when I'm done, like when I'm done killing clowns. So
I think it's solid. Something I want to mention that I don't think I've talked about in any Clown Hunter stuff yet, but I think Clayton Cowles has been the letterer in all of it, and this has been consistent. I really like the font and the choice that they use. It's all lowercase as opposed to the standard uppercase that we get. It's almost a Comic Sans style font. It feels very young, right? It feels childish, and I think I really like that for Clown Hunter. It makes him feel young, and he is, right? Obviously, he's a school kid.
Yeah,
but I think it really works effectively.
And there's even that touch where Batman's like, I can't just take you in because the neighborhood basically loves you and will not corroborate anything that they saw you do. They'll all stick up for you. So taking you in wouldn't work right now anyway. But if you do keep killing, I will come and stop you.
They'd all stand up and go, I am Clown Hunter.
Yes. So it ends. It's basically just their meeting, their first proper meeting to set up kind of like where they'd stand with each other and setting up this next story. And it does say to be continued in Batman 101, so that would definitely suggest that obviously this is going to be the focus for the next arc.
Yeah, I mean, Tynan is very good at juggling multiple villains at a time, as we've seen with Punchline and now Clown Hunter, right?
Mm-hmm.
So it wouldn't surprise me if we see Ghostmaker? I can't remember. Pop up in the next arc at least, but maybe Clown Hunter would be the focus.
Mm-hmm. And then the third story, the final story, is the Joker, who we never see his face, we see he's in a hoodie, we just see the shadow of where his face would be. He's talking to this guy, and they're basically looking at this footage of Punchline, who, in the news, she's been kind of basically campaigning that she is another victim of the Joker, and that she's not crazy enough to go to Arkham. And it all feels very like a performance to me, at least. I get the impression that she's smart enough that she's playing this card, but in full well she's still completely devout to the Joker.
Oh, absolutely. It feels very real world in a sense, in that you know like when some people have to make an apology, and when you read the apology or watch the apology video, whatever they do, and it doesn't feel genuine.
Yeah.
And they're kind of just doing the motions that society expects. That's kind of what this feels like.
And Joker uses his smoke to turn this guy into a corpse that looks like him. Jokerizes him, and he is basically saying that that all this was a test to see how far he could push it, and so Batman's going to adjust, the city's going to adjust, and then he can come in and do his real endgame. And it's easy to kind of sort of roll your eyes at us a little bit, because obviously Joker's always going to come back with an even bigger plan than the last time he was here with a big plan. But I thought this was well told enough. Obviously Gillian March's art is easily the weakest art of the book.
Yeah,
not surprising. But
another point where I want to praise Clayton Cowles' lettering is, this doesn't have a Joker font like it usually does. He's undercover. He's putting on a voice presumably, but there's a point where he laughs, and his real laughs breaks through, and the font changes, and you kind of just get that. It's really smart stuff.
Yeah. So, yeah, I mean, it's almost like he wanted to reset the game board, because he says Batman was almost getting boring because things were the same for too long. So this was all about shaking things up. So, obviously, it seems that Tynan's got some sort of plan for another Joker story, and maybe this will be the thing that ends up being his last arc, is whatever this Joker follow up is.
Yeah, I hope it's not too soon. He feels like he's got quite a bit in him still, with between Clown Hunter and Ghostmaker. It feels like we've got at least 2 arcs yet.
Oh, for sure. It may even be more than that. I'm saying
I hope it's more.
I could see this being like the end of his run, even if his run lasts another 40 issues, that this will be the last arc. But at the same time, part of me is like, well, does every writer have to end with the Joker as their big finale? Not everyone has, but it feels like it happens a lot, because the Joker's kind of seen as the big.
It kind of feels like a lot of the time. I don't think it's they plan to end with the Joker, but it feels like a lot of the time the writers get told, "Hey, you've got one last arc," and they were like, "Well, I've got one more Joker story I want to tell," and they're like, "Well, I'm going to get it done, but in case I never get another chance."
Yeah.
And because let's be honest, every writer has multiple Joker stories ready and waiting, because he's the Batman villain.
Yep, there's some truth to that. But that's the issue. That's Batman issue 100. And it's
really good.
Yeah, it's just a solid issue. The backups were both good teases, especially the Clown Hunter one. But
the Joker one is continued in the Punchline one shot.
Yes, it says that then. But the main story I think is basically pays off everything that he's been doing, and is very exciting. It feels like the Bat family's in a great place, and even if like obviously Batgirl's ending, and maybe it makes sense that now that they're teasing she's going to be Oracle again, maybe it makes sense that her book is ending, and it's not some malicious Batgirl's just ending because they want to end it, want to cancel it.
I think the backup stories are fine. They're solid teases. What I expect from backup stories. The main story, though, I think is more or less flawless for what it's doing. I don't think I have really anything to complain about in the main story. Everything it does is really good.
Yeah. And of course they have to bury Alfred again, and there's like one panel of like, and he says, I did that with my family. And I like that you can see that Dick's one of the silhouettes, because Dick didn't really, like, he was around for Alfred's funeral the first time, but he was Rick, and it was kind of like detached from the whole situation.
It didn't really count. Yeah. And again, him saying, he had to bury his father again today, just that acknowledgement.
Yeah. So, yeah, that was good. What are you giving it?
8.5.
I'll give it a 9. I'll go with the 9. That was really, really good.
Just the backup stories didn't quite wow me enough to get the 9.
I'm almost just not really even counting them. I'm just kind of giving the main story a 9, and they're bonus.
If it was just the main story, it would have been a 9.